Hello and welcome to Curious Kitchen. Today we're going to talk about beef stock, our next and final installment in the stock series, at least for now. I consider beef stock to be kind of the king of flavor when it comes to the stocks and sauces you can make out of it. So much gelatin that can be extracted to create great body. You can get a rich, really dark, deep roast and have a really large, wide range of flavors and ways you can incorporate into sauces, and potages, and braises, and stews. So, barring this weird kind of intro, this takes some time, so I want to get these roasting right away. But we'll go through a proper ingredient and equipment list, I promise. But for now, preset or preheat your ovens to 232 Celsius or 450 degrees Fahrenheit. And if you already have these by chance or pre-washed, which is smart of you, 8 pounds of beef bones. Let's get these roasted nice and dark. Then let's go do a proper intro, shall we? With the beef bones roasting, the astute of you will probably already figured out, yes, we're doing the roasted bone method of stock making. And you may be thinking, we already did this with chicken stock, why are we doing it now? Well, a few things. One, I like it, and I want to show it, because beef bones are pretty I can't think of the word. They're very common. They're common, at least in the Western kitchens, when making beef stocks, beef soups. You can see a lot of use in pho's and ramens and other parts of the world and part of Chinese cuisine as well. But today, the methodology that we're using is also going to compare with a new technique, tomato paste, and we're going to perform the technique of pince. So if you have your little notebooks, your little binders I was mentioning in the very first episode of the series, get ready to write this down. Everything else will be kind of the same. We're still performing dépoulages. We're still working with our mirepoix. We're still doing a deglazing. So again, deglazing, searing hot pan, cool water, creating a lot of steam. So take care of your fire alarms or ventilations. But that being said, let's begin with our equipment list and then ingredients. To begin with our ingredients, just like when we're cutting mirepoix, we're going to need a knife and cutting board, and then we'll need a scale to make sure everything stays in a consistent ratio. Again, remembering your mirepoix ratio being 2:1:1. I like to use weight, other people like to use cups, whatever floats your boat, as long as we keep the ratio the same. Next, we will need, obviously, the stock pot for making said stock. You will need a colander or wire strainer or both. If you wish to use cheesecloth to get a very fine mesh out of it, be my guest. Or if you're making a bouquet garni or sachet d'épices, you will need butcher's twine. As for the rest of our equipment, you will need a pair of tongs to handle all the hot bones, a spoon or some sort of flat edge like this to help scrape the bottom of the pan when we're performing the glaze, same as we were doing with the chicken stock. And then the ladle for dépoulaging. And if you don't remember that vocab word, we are skimming the top free of scum and fat of our stock for our finished product. Make sure you have one that you like, as in good. Lastly, you'll need something for your hands, such as oven mitts, towels, whatever floats your boat. And finally, a heat-proof container. Mine are all currently being washed at the moment, but something to cool down your hot stock. Again, we want the stock to go down below 4 degrees Celsius or 40 degrees Fahrenheit in less than 6 hours. Now for the ingredients. Before I press on, I did want to mention that this stock takes anywhere from 12 to 24 hours, so plan accordingly. But for our ingredients, we have our onions, carrot, and celery, which make up our mirepoix, respectively 2 parts, 1 part to 1 part. We need 4 ounces of celery, 4 ounces of carrot, respectively 113 grams each, 8 ounces or 278 grams of onions. We will need our black peppercorns, 10 to 15, which will be lightly crushed. Same with our garlic cloves, between 8 to 9, sometimes more if you like. 3 dried bay leaves, and parsley. Now, usually, I call for stems of parsley because you want to save the leaves for garnishes and other things like that. But because I had so much parsley from my other videos, I dried them out in my dehydrator and I'm using about half a cup's worth of dried parsley for this. Finally, thyme. We need anywhere from 6 to 10 stems of thyme. You can pick them clean and just use the stems themselves or use whole leaves. It is up to you. And last but not least, The big reason I wanted to do this video is the tomato paste, and we're talking about pinceing. This is 6 ounces or 170 grams of tomato paste. For us in the United States, that's usually 1 can or 1 6-ounce can of tomato paste. This recipe will yield around a gallon's worth of stock, which we'll also need to be using. Obviously, cold water. It's kind of hard to measure how much cold water we actually need to begin with, because this being such a long time and such a long cook time, wow, I cannot speak today, we're going to need to add more water, more liquid, especially I'm going to let this go overnight, which I intend to do. The house is going to smell like beef stock for almost 2 days straight. With that, let's talk about some bones and check on them in the oven. So, if you can see here, I bought these frozen, so it's important that when you put them in, if you have frozen bones or not, either way, make sure you take the time to try to separate them and lay them out flat. Some are too frozen, they won't come apart right away. That's okay. We're going to come back here and turn them every 20 or 30 minutes until we get a nice golden brown. Now, if the camera shows it well enough, you can see there's good fat globules on here, and we can always see a lot of the fat kind of already rendering again. That's okay. We're going to drain this away before we do any other roasting or extra deglazing in the pan. Now, when searching for beef bones, typically you can find these at your local grocery stores, usually labeled soup bones, or sometimes labeled split bone. You can find them typically in the freezer section, or talk to the in-store butcher. If not in your in-store butcher, if you can find an actual butcher shop, they would usually have split bones on hand. Now, I kind of missed it because obviously it's already in the oven, but for equipment, we need to have a good roasting pan. The high walls will allow any fat and everything to not drip away from it. Everything will stay in place, especially when these bones start popping from the heat and, hot fat touching cold waters and such like that. You can get away with a jelly roll pan. If you don't know what that is, it is those sheet trays that are kind of rolled and have a lip to it. The only issue you have to worry about, especially with bones that are already frozen, is all the extra moisture leaking out, how much fat's going to leak out. It could potentially be an issue, so be very mindful. Worst case, you can grab a casserole dish or 2, depending on how many bones you're actually roasting, and do it that way. What's important is to have high walls, it's heat resistant, and can be safe. I do not recommend deglazing in a glass casserole dish. Save that for metals. If you have to do it, it'd be better just to scrape off as much as you can of the fond, if you remember that vocab word, into a pot, and just have to sacrifice not having to get a good deglaze. I can't imagine tempered glass would be too happy with that. Anyways, let's go prep some veggies. I can already smell the beef starting to fill the house with flavor. So, beginning, cleaning, peeling. With the veggies prepped, we only need 4 ounces of each of the carrot, 1 celery, and the 8 ounces of onion. Since this is going to be such a long cook time, I already took the liberty of having my onions. I'm going to quarter them in total. These larger pieces, just like I mentioned in the chicken stock video, will hold up longer. So if we cut these down into 8s in the chicken stock video, or whatever we cut them down to, we want to cut them almost double that here. Now, I am not going to roast these in the pan on the stovetop like I did the chicken stock. I'm actually going to throw them back in the oven so they kind of cook more evenly, since these large pieces will kind of fall apart and break apart. Now, when it comes to the carrot and celery, this carrot's a little hefty, so I'll probably cut it in half and then run down the top like so, and keep those like this. Now for length, we want about maybe 3 inches. Sorry, move away from the camera. We want maybe about 3 inches in length. That's about there. It's about 3.5 inches. If you can see, I don't have the conversion on my head for millimeters or anything like that. So we want about the same for the celery. These larger pieces mean that they'll hold up a little bit more in the pot and won't disintegrate or turn into mush entirely. This is also when people will start incorporating sachets, which I'll discuss in the aromatics in a second. to stop the bittering of the stock from too many greens, such as parsley or thyme stems. But for now, this is the mirepoix. Let's get the aromatics. Now for this video, I'm not just being lazy, but I really don't care about peeling the leaves off of the thyme stems. But let's say if you needed this thyme for a garnishing elsewhere, you'd peel off the leaves, keep them for the garnish, and use the stems and the stalk. But here, I really don't care. The bay leaves are bay leaves, they're not a huge deal, but the garlic, we do need to prep by giving a light crushing and getting the skin taken away. So like I've said before, garlic down, flat of knife, and then your hand. I usually like keeping a closed fist, but I've seen it either way. My only concern with the hope this way is you accidentally curl your fingers because you're kind of contouring to the blade and you're not mindful of it. You could stab yourself, which is, no good, but, it happens. I don't trust a cook who doesn't have a few scars. Just like a lot of people say, I don't trust a skinny cook. Well, I am definitely not a skinny cook. But get these peeled away, get these put in. Now, what I mentioned earlier is when I talked about the sachet d'épices and the bouquet garni in earlier videos, this is where I find more chefs have a controversy or they debate whether to use it or not, especially on a beef stock. Now, personally, I've never had to use one with the chefs I've worked with. We've usually add the aromatics towards the very end of the process, or just right through the whole thing and the chef just didn't care because we're going to, cook it down and use it for a demi-glace or an espagnole sauce. But for you at home, you kind of have to weigh your options, like having, really strong flavored chloroplast that you get from, leafy greens like the parsley and the thyme could bitter the stock. Or the flavor of the beef will be so overwhelming it's not a huge issue. Personally, I would probably consider a sachet of bouquet garni if it came to we're doing a blanched bone stock and we wanted more subtle flavors that I would want to use for like a consommé or a nice clear soup. But here, I honestly think the beef will be too strong. The other aromatic that we don't really need to prep, other than taking it out of the can and not getting garlic pieces on it, is having your tomato paste at the ready, because as soon as the veggies come out of the oven, and we start the deglazing part, we were into Pince before we deglaze. So you want to be ready with this on the go, which I will demonstrate and actually talk about. But first, these bones smell really good. Let's check on them. Let's check the bones. With tongs on hand and something to keep your hands from burning on the rack. See, you can see, if I can get you apart, there's a big globule of fat there, which is going to render out. Now, if you don't get all the fat, which you probably won't because it's just the nature of this stock and everything works, don't worry, skim as much as you can, and we will, when the stock cools down, the fat will create a layer on top and congeal. Typically, beef stocks end up with an orange fat. I don't really know why. I didn't research that part, but look at that. At the inside of the bone, the marrow right there, that's going to be so much flavor. But for now, keep everything moving around, keep it mobile, and let's keep going, checking about every 20 or 30 minutes. Let's talk about Pince. So, while your bones are roasting and you have all your mise en place in place, again, mise en place, everything in its place, and ready to go, let's talk about pince. Now, as I mentioned before, pince means to pinch. This is in a kind of a way or a method was named because of the way when tomato paste is added to a hot pan, it kind of pinches together and you get this layer of like red on the bottom of the pan. This is used with aromatics such as mirepoix or any other garlics, anything like that, to help flavor or enhance the depth of flavor of a sauce, of a braise, of a stew, what have you. This method being codified and standardized by Monsieur Escoffier. But the first known writing of the pince method comes from one Chef Anton Carmet. Sorry, my notes are down here. I gotta make sure. In the early 18th century. That being said, the tomatoes did not arrive into Europe until the late 15th century, and then almost took 200 to 300 years to be used or be seen as an edible food product, mainly because its association and look of nightshade, which is incredibly poisonous. There are also just many tall tales, journals, and other writings out there that painted tomato as a horrific crop, a disease spreader, similar to what potatoes would be in the French cuisine as well, up until Monsieur Panier, but that's for another episode. But it was seen as a poisonous and dangerous vegetable. Some people even equating it to leaching lead on your pewter plates, and some historians kind of cite that as an issue, which wasn't true. There wasn't enough acidity for it to do that. That's a whole interesting thing. I'll post that actually below. A really interesting article from the Smithsonian that talks about it. But the first use and commercial availability of tomato paste is attributed to come out of Sicily during the during the 18th century. So it kind of points the timeline of where it would be. Some people say that the Pince method is even older than Antoine Carme, saying it's even 200 years older. But it's kind of conjecture, and without a lot of primary sources, it's hard to say exactly where it came from. But we know that it has been standardized since the 19th century, Monsieur Escoffier. Now, let's play the waiting game and get these bones and vegetables roasted.
Ooh, lots of fat. That is okay. We want that. Give them a good rotation. See that they're starting to really get dark in there. It's all rotated. Careful of the fat. You don't want to splash any on yourself or into your oven, because you'll end up starting a fire. That little marrow. Let these go for about another half hour longer. We'll check on them again. Look at those. You can definitely hear them. I am happy with that color. It's a nice deep golden brown. So let's bring it up top side. All this extra fat, do not pour this down your sink. The fat will congeal and clog your sink, and your plumber will kill you. So we are going to dump out as much of this fat as possible, letting it drip away as much as we can. I prefer just putting it into metal because I know it can handle the heat, but I am sure a good tempered glass measuring cup could also deal with it. I'm just overly cautious about it. So, into your roasting pan, we're going to toss our cut mirepoix. And if you really want, like I'm going to do, I'm going to add my garlic to this. Give this a little bit of a toss. It's going to go back into the oven. Let's try about 10 minutes and see where we're at. So it's been about 12 minutes. Taking the mirepoix out with my garlic. Now, some people may suggest to broil this or put the broil on your oven. I think the direct heat is a little too much, and you'll end up blackening your mirepoix or your vegetables before it actually gets a little bit of caramelization to it. You can see here the onions are just starting to turn color, so I'm very happy with that. And they haven't totally started a full cooking process, but are getting there. Onions are soft, the carrots are a little soft, but not enough that's going to hurt the stock. So, with a little bit of water in your hand to deglaze, and your tomato paste nearby for pince. If you have the ability to have a burner on and to put heat underneath this, do that now. If not, you can put this back in the oven with the tomato paste, and every 3 or 4 minutes go in there and kind of scrape away the pan, let the tomato paste caramelize, and then add your liquid to it. Again, you can kind of hear it winding up, the heat's coming back into it. Be sure to take care of your fire alarm. I hope I did mine, so forgive the noise and the loudness, but we're going to perform the pince, the deglaze, and toss it into the pot. you can really start smelling the tomato, really strong aromatic flavor. You can start smelling the difference between being caramelized and just being popped open from the can. We don't want this to get too dark, but we want the tomato paste to kind of darken up a little bit like that. That's telling me that it's actually caramelizing. And you see how it's creating that glossy red glow down below? That means it's starting to stick to the bottom, which we want it to do. See, my pan's kind of burning down there. We don't want that. So we're going to try to move that away. Just lifting my pan up. You know, burning and stuff will happen. They're pans. Now that I have a nice dark sheen to it like that, starting to caramelize real well, I'm going to go ahead and glaze. Which one? Kind of a lackluster deglazing, but that's what happens when you're using a flat top stove like this. Sometimes it's just uneventful. Anyways, we're still going to continue. You can see it kind of simmering together right there. Scrape the bottom of your pan, get all the extra fond off the base. All those bits and pieces. As much as you can. Careful, if it evaporates too fast, it'll start bubbling on you and it can spray on you. So if that happens, add a touch more water to it. And just get all that fond off the pan as much as you can. So, kill these. Add a touch more water. Get all the glaze off of it. Take this. Ready? Now, glazed, you can see it should be a fairly clean pan. And if you're a little bit like me and you kind of want to get all of the goodness out of there, go ahead and take a little bit of your cold water, add it to the pot, add it to the roasting pan, then back into the pot. Uneventful, so we'll kill the heavy fan on that. Get this thing up a little bit because I made a mess. This is extremely hot. You don't want to put your pot on the already hot burner because, again, we want to start this in cold water and start relatively cold. So we will add the remaining 3 quarts of cold water to this spot. Hot. Remember, we always use cold water to start our stocks. This will help any of the fats that you can kind of see right here, if I can get a good zoom in on it. You can see some of the fats have already started to congeal and float to the top. This also means that everything can kind of come to a similar temperature. We just got the carrots out of a hot oven, or the mirepoix out of a hot oven. The bones have been sitting for a little while, so the temperature differential is gonna make it a little weirder or wonky for good convection currents to start. So getting everything to a close to average temperature will allow the heat from the bottom to rise up and create those convection currents, which you mentioned. Now, another little trick here is if you don't have or have too much mirepoix or too many bones, and you don't really know the conversion to have more water, or you want, for any reason, you want more or less water. A standard ratio, in which I mentioned in the chicken stock and the vegetable stock recipe, is to have the bed of vegetables and bones at the bottom and add 2 inches of water above that line. Now, this is going to have a lot of evaporation going on. So if you want to make sure you have a consistent yield of the 1 gallon, because you add a gallon of water to it, there's going to be evaporation over the next 12 to 24 hours, take a Sharpie or something, piece of masking tape, whatever, mark on the side of your pot where the water line is. So you kind of have a general idea of where you want to refill it to. Eventually, naturally, a water line will form of where the stock has stuck to the base or stuck to the side of it. But for now, let's bring it over to a simmer over medium heat. Then we will depoulage and add our aromatics. Now that it has reached that nice simmer, or really close to it, I'm going to get the top layer of scum off, and then work my way getting rid of fat. Now remember, we want to get to a nice simmer. A simmer is below a boil, but above a poach, in which you have these nice small bubbles kind of rolling over the raft of floating vegetables that you'll see here shortly. It lets everything wash down, cool down, and then the water then descend back to the bottom, gathering the heat from the burner below and just letting everything flow. So all the extra flavor can get infused into the stock. I like to dépoulage before adding aromatics, but you can do either way. And throughout the course of this whole thing, you'd probably want to dépoulage quite a few times, because more fat will render out to the surface, especially since it's going to be immersed in, simmering water as opposed to the dry heat method coming off of the oven. But I like how little fat I have on there at the moment. More pockets will eventually form. And for now, I'm going to toss in our aromatics. The thyme, bay leaf, peppercorns, garlic is already in there. And then the dried parsley I had left over from my other. And then my little favorite concoction. Now, just like with the pork stock video, I make these recipes so you understand the basics of making the stock. But it's up to you if you want to add more pizzazz, more or less anything you want. What do you want out of the intended stock? We're cooking with purpose. So here, I have juniper berries, cloves, and star anise. Now we're going to let this go for about maybe an hour or so, and then I'll come back and dépoulage again. So, it's been about 3 hours since this has been on, and you can see that line there. Let me see if I can get the camera zoomed in for everybody. It's on a tripod here. You can see the line there where the water level has gone down from evaporation. This is natural. This is what happens. It's part of the cooking process. So, before I go to bed, and even right now, I want to show you how I add water to this without completely killing the convection currents. First, make sure you have hot tap water, as hot as you can get it from your sink, and then just go along the rim of the pot and try to have it follow the metal down, so you don't force this essentially cold water compared to the rest of the pot pressing against that raft. We're going to stop the convection currents just very briefly, or they'll slow down a lot, but they'll pick back up, the raft stays in place, and we have a chance to refill our water line. Now, I am going to let this sit. I'll probably hit with more water, and I'm going to let it go overnight, and I will see you at the 12-hour mark. So, it's been about 14 hours because I slept in a little bit, but you can see how much evaporation we've had here. I'm going to add a little more water to this and let it go for another 6 hours and see what happens. 24 hours later, and we have our beef stock. Not to mention almost a quart of scum and fat I skimmed off the top of this. So I've had to add water to this several times, if you couldn't tell, because this would have been nothing, especially this morning. So now we get it off the stove. So I have a double strainer to catch the big stuff and a wire strainer to catch the more finer stuff. I'm going to try my best not to just dump the bones in there and get most of the stock out, but we will see what happens. This is hot, and you'll end up getting a facial doing this. So if there is extra fat on the pot, or on top of the pot, don't worry about it. It'll be fine. When it cools down, we can scrape off that excess. Now,
It is hard sometimes to judge how much liquid you actually got out of it. And if you want to get more, whoopsies, we can do something called a remoulade, in which you refill this with cold water and simmer it for another 12 or so hours. That is called the remoulade. A lot of times in the industry, at least with my personal experience in the industry, the remoulade would be reduced down even further after the cooking process in the mirepoix and bones, and be used as a base for demi-glaces and other sauces. So, if you can see, there's a decent layer of fat on there, but that's okay. So, we want to get this cooled down in a heat-proof container, again, no more than 2 inches tall, because we want to get this below 4 degrees Celsius or 40 degrees Fahrenheit in less than 6 hours. That's a hot pot. Into the container we go. You can already see some of that fat there. I told you, it turns orange. I think when I looked it up, I actually did look it up overnight. It's something to do with the amino acids and the beta-carotene and how it breaks down in the process. So again, into the fridge, just like our chicken stock and not veg stock necessarily, but like the chicken and the pork stock. 2 to 3 weeks in the refrigerator in an airtight container, or 2 to 3 months in the freezer. But before you freeze it, I suggest letting this cool down completely and then remove the fat cap. I guess you want to cool down anyways, but you know what I mean. Your stock put to bed. That concludes our stock series in the Curious Kitchen, at least for now. I'll probably come back and touch on a few things. So, if this is your first time making a beef stock, I want to congratulate you on making one of my personal favorite stocks and the king of flavor. Again, well, in my opinion, we can fight about the comment section, but please let me know down below what you thought about the stock series, what you would probably like to see. And moving forward, we start with knife work and then into sauces. Again, I have been Cody. This is Curious Kitchen. Keep your knives sharp and your palates open.